Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And we're recording live from our studios in Orlando, Florida. No, really, it's just a room full of boxes because we're about to move next month, if everything goes all right, to a new place.
As long as the hurricane doesn't
And
destroy everything.
Well, if the hurricane blows through,
yeah.
hopefully it blows through before we close in the house, so that way they got to fix it first. But yeah, so today we are going to be talking about our next European park. This is Plopsaland De Panne. You probably don't know it from much besides Anubis the Ride or the brand new Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland, the Mac Extreme Spinner. And so we'll take it for a quick tour around this awfully Belgian park.
Awfully Belgian.
Well, that is,
very.
I mean, it's very Belgian because it's all the franchises of this Belgian company called Studio 100. And
love this park.
I know Alex is weirdly obsessed with this, but probably because he doesn't know any of the franchises, so he doesn't. He just sees a bunch of really fun characters, but he doesn't really know the background. And I guess that must be really mystical.
I feel like for an American, this is such a funny park because you're in this like Disney-esque, but like tacky. Well, not maybe tacky, a little bit. It's not bad. I don't think it's bad. Some people do, but I found it like this alternate universe, kind of Disney-ish. Disney meets Six Flags kind of thing, where there's like all these different intellectual properties, like a wide breadth of different intellectual properties and their own rides, not themed areas, but just like a mishmash of rides tethered to intellectual properties just scattered around the park. And none of these properties are stuff that like Westerners would be familiar with, like virtually none of them. So it's just kind of funny.
I mean, Europeans are Westerners.
Culture. I mean, like Western Hemisphere.
Okay.
I always mean Western Hemisphere.
Because Western culture is also like Netherlands and Belgium and France and Spain and UK.
Fair enough.
If they matter.
North Americans would not know these intellectual properties, generally speaking. Maybe Canadians would, but generally speaking, not Americans. So it was just kind of funny going through this place, and there's like a lot of substance with these intellectual properties that, like me as an American, I have no concept of, so it's kind of funny.
So, first and foremost, this park didn't open as Plopsaland De Panne. It was actually a park called Melee Park, or Melee Park, depending on who you ask. And that is a honey brand, so it was themed after, well, it's like a honey brand, and it had a bit of a fairy tale forest kind of vibe to it.
Thing.
Exactly. And then Plopsa, or Studio 100, which is the owner of About the Plop, Samson and Gert, those are the main big first shows, which by the name Plopsa became a thing. They started the park, and over the years it turned into more of a resort. So now we've got a water park, indoor water park, a actual outdoor theme park, of course, an indoor theme park, small one called Mayaland, and a hotel. So that's kind of what we got going on right now. The park is located near the ocean, or near the North Sea, really, on the west coast of Belgium, and it is located in Vlaanderen, which is the Dutch-speaking part. Obviously, heavy accent if you're from the Netherlands, but that's where the park is located. The one thing I kind of want to mention real quick before diving into the actual theme park is that Plopsaqua, or Plopsaqua, however you want to pronounce it, is their indoor water park. It's not very large, but it actually is a cool collaboration between a local municipality and the actual resort itself, because local municipalities wanted to build new public pools for the locals at the same time that Plopsa wanted to add an indoor water park. So they joined forces, combined budgets, and locals can enter Plopsaqua as like their local pool for cheaper. And people that visit the resort get to have an indoor water park experience that they can add to their vacation.
It's just cool. That's like the most European thing ever.
It's pretty European.
In like the best way.
But yeah, let's talk right into the park. The entrance is a little weird, not gonna lie. It's a giant door. The entrance is
cool because it's like a... Oh, yes. Like
the giant door is okay, but then after it's like a giant billboard with a bunch of characters on it. It's a little messy, I know.
I guess like the marquee, but I mean like the entrance, like the plaza.
But the entrance plaza really is cool. It's a giant town square.
Like this park has a really nice presence.
Plopsaqua, Mayaland, and then the rest of the park all meet.
I think there's a lot of parks in Europe, with the exception of maybe like Efteling, where sometimes the entrance and plaza, or lack thereof, is not super pronounced. Like Bobbejaanland, the entrance, like the turnstiles and stuff, is very matter of fact. Bellevade, even like Phantasialand, it has several little entrances, and it has Berlin, which is like their main street, but they don't really have an entrance plaza per se, whereas this park has... The plaza kind of almost gave me like Disneyland Resort vibes in the sense that like you've got a lot of things attached to the square. Like if you think of Disneyland, the center of Disneyland Resort, like the exact center of it as being like a square where you have Disneyland to the north, California Adventure to the south, Downtown Disney to the west, and the bus center and the rest of like, and the street entrance to Disneyland to the right. That for some reason that's what this reminded me of, because you had the entrance to the park. Once you were in the turnstiles, if you took a left, that would bring you to the rest of Plopsaland De Panne. If you went straight, you would go into the indoor Mayaland, and to the right was Plops Aqua and the hotel.
So yeah, it's a nice square. It's got some water features, a couple of restaurants. Even in the dark, it was very nice when we left for the day. So what way around should we do the lap? Should we do a lap around the park, or should we? I
guess we could. Do you want to? Should we start with? Because of course our day, of course, started with Ride to Happiness, but we'll finish the episode with that. So we'll start. I think a good place to start is with that little dark ride. That's actually immediately if you take a hard right. Once you take a left from the plaza and you're facing the majority of the amusement park, the outdoor park. You can either go straight, which takes you kind of to the center of the park, like where Anubis is. You can hang a left that kind of curves around to the edge, which is where Ride to Happiness is and like Heidi and stuff. Or you take a right, which then gradually curves around to the left for that far perimeter of the park, which has some of the older attractions, including the like signature little old mill dark ride that is themed to Kabouter Plop.
A gnome.
Yes. Okay. So Kabouter Plop is very Smurf-like, I guess.
No, they're not Smurfs.
Well, they're kind of like Smurfs. They live in mushrooms.
They're gnomes. They live in mushrooms, and their little
Smurfs
hats
are gnomes.
Their little hats move up. They're more like humany gnomes.
You're humanoid. No, the Kabouter Plop.
Just Google it.
The characters.
Kabouter space Plop.
Kabouter Plop is performed. They're performed by live actors, so it's not a cartoon like the Smurfs, but they are like 6 inches tall and live inside of mushrooms. So they're miniature people living in these little villages. And sometimes, like watching the live action version, sometimes I kind of forget that it's supposed to be downscaled. There's not really a frame of reference, and since I'm not really familiar with the intellectual property, I just kind of think that it's like normal-sized humans living in a normal-sized human world that's like a fantasy, like cottagecore looking thing. But then when we rode the ride, I'm like everything is actual size, like canon size. So it's a bunch of tiny little animatronic gnomes with their little hats. The hats are funny. It's like they're these little... How would you even describe the hats? Because the hats are like...
Well,
iconic.
The hats are like little upside-down pants.
Yeah.
With little bells at the end.
With bells on the end.
And every time they are in shock or they're excited or whatever happens, the little hats...
The hats like...
Jump up.
And the bells ring or whatever. It's
so the whole dark ride is pretty much like 10 minutes of just a million of these little characters doing that the entire time.
Yeah.
Bling.
Bling. It sounds weird. And my first impressions of it was like, what is the deal with the hats? I mean, the hat is so iconic that even like the Plopsa indoor amusement parks, like the ensign is literally just the hat. But yeah, it's kind of like a jester hat sort of thing. It's not unlike Pardos and his little hat with the bells on it. It's just very European, almost like just entertainment character stuff. But yeah, so this little ride was kind of had the Small World vibes a little bit, maybe a little bit like Monster Mansion at
it had a pretty
Six Flags
it had
Georgia.
A small but like a fun drop in there.
Yeah, it had a cute little drop in the on-ride photo. 6 passenger boats sitting 2 across, rows of 3 rows.
9 if you have little kids with you.
And really darling. Like a huge delight for someone like me who just like wallows in and like relishes in vintage style dark rides, like old school. I'm convinced. I don't know who built this, but I could swear that it's like a little aerodynamics dark ride from the 70s. I know the ride's old. It was probably Mac. I'm guessing Mac built it because Aero wasn't like supplying a lot of rides to this region. at that point in time. Actually, they never really supplied a lot of rides to that region. But if you were riding this thing, you would not really necessarily.
I think it's very possible because the park also has a Loch Fluence Mac and a Mac powered coaster.
But to ride it, you would think like, oh, this is exactly like Monster Mansion or like the Six Flags Over Texas little boat dark ride that's being rethemed this year. It's that sort of thing. The ride is so cute. It was a huge surprise, and I just loved it. In that area of the park, you have like lots of kiddie rides. The Samson and whoever it is, Samson and Gert area. There's like
Samson and Marie now.
Oh yeah, Marie.
Samson and Marie is their little like fairground themed area.
Yeah.
Where they've got a couple of pretty basic flat rides for kids. Then when you move
like
over, you have Vikiland,
right?
Which that's the most impressive because it's Vicky the Viking.
Yeah. It's newer, and it has the giant disco coaster that you walk under. Sven said that it's pretty similar to the Wikiland that's at Holiday Park, so pretty cool, straightforward. There's also that tractor ride, like it's an antique car ride style ride. This is over closer to the dark ride that's like in this little farm area. There's like actual farm animals in the infield for the ride, which again is like super European. Very cute.
The animals actually walk up to the ride vehicles, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
but awfully European. Mm-hmm. And
then from there you kind of circle around. This is like the back perimeter of the park,
like an extra kind of loop.
And so the park is like a big circle with a strike through it, and the strike through the middle has two of the coasters or two of the major rides, Anubis and Super Splash, which we count as a credit. It's a Max Super Splash. It's the only one on roller coaster that's not. It's part of the same product line as all the other Super Splashes, but for whatever reason, it's not listed as a credit on. It's not on Roller Coaster Database for some reason, even though it's just the same product line. But this one is unique in the sense that it uses an elevator, a rotating elevator inside of a silo. You dispatch into this elevator that spins you around.
There's some star effects.
It's very space efficient.
You move around and then you face the opposite direction on the top.
Deposits you out the drop, and it has the airtime hill, and then a nice big splash into the
and then the ride's
lagoon.
Flume goes underneath.
It goes underneath the
happiness
airtime hill, and it goes. Oh yeah, it goes
and
under
then
right
on
to
its way
happiness.
back, it makes an S shape underneath the
airtime hill.
And if you're lucky, you'll catch a boat going
really
over it while you're under
ride.
it.
Satisfying, a little bit more space efficient than the traditional like triangle shaped Super Splash rides. But I really liked it. We had an evening here at the park. The park was busy. The park has two kiddie coasters, a large Tivoli, like the double figure 8 Tivoli called Victor's Race or something.
Yeah, I think it's what it's called. Yeah.
We had the Kadri roller skater, which is just a basic roller skater.
So Kadri is a pop group for kids that started with 3 women back in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe even before that, late 90s.
It's very Spice Girls
very big in the Netherlands and Belgium. I, as a kid, had like all the merch. And then one of the band members left. They found a new band member, and then these 3 girls retired and got 3 new girls on board. And now I think they're finding another new member. But it's just been this like tradition for like kids to grow up with. This like and like their songs are actually like
pretty good,
pretty thought provoking.
And they're
Sven,
very positive,
who was with us on our trip when we drove from Phantasialand back to Park Asterix area, Disneyland Paris area. We were blasting Kadri songs from our childhood in Dutch, and we were like, "Damn, this is actually like a really thought provoking. This is like all about equality and treating each other right, and
like, come as you are, be yourself." It was very
van Afrika tot in Amerika.
Yeah.
It was a good song. Look it up.
Yeah.
So they have a little roller skater theme to that.
It just sucks. It's really cute. It's actually a reskin of another intellectual property where everything is miniature. Do you remember off the top of your head?
It is. It was themed, if I'm not mistaken, to I forgot the show's name, but it is about a pet shop, and after it closes for the day, the mice and the birds and stuff, which are played by humans in costumes.
Of course.
A little creepy when I think about it. They run around and cause havoc.
Because there was a prop. It's a bunch of larger than life props. It's like it's a little bit like Toy Story Land, Bugs Land kind of scale of things. Like Andy's bedroom. Like you're kind of the scale is that you're shrunken down and things are miniature in your miniature in a world of like full size things. There's like that kitchen display thing, and then like there's a prop that the roller coaster goes through that was originally a washing machine,
and now it's a stereo box,
stereo, like a karaoke machine, because it's cadre theme.
That's kind of cool.
So that's clever. Yeah. So the ride's seen a couple of.
They also have a Starflyer, which is one of the more thrilling rides there. Because I mean, you have to know this park is very family oriented.
It's really.
I would say like 90% of their lineup is like kids and family friendly.
Even though the House of Anubis roller coaster is like a major thrill ride, it was a thrill ride in an otherwise enormous family park.
Like, I mean, before Anubis, there was literally no thrill rides.
Yeah,
it was literally nothing.
Really a kiddie park.
The only reason Anubis was added is because the House Anubis, or Het Huis van Anubis, was a major Dutch-Belgium TV show that made it to the UK and the US in 2011. Yeah. But they opened that coaster and in 2011 itself, because the franchise was so big, and this was a good way for them to use one of their own IPs to draw in like larger, or older kids. Because I mean, the kids that were growing up at the Plopsaland were also getting older and were starting to watch Huis van Anubis.
Plopsaland De Panne is the park that grows with you. It opened in 2000. 20 years later,
the kids that went there for the kids shows when they were younger are now going there for the music festivals
when they were like 5 years old, going and riding like Blue Mouse and stuff, which was a rare twin-track bat flyer roller coaster that was sold to Trans Studio Bali, and it's open again. So that's
which is really also cool. Where the Knott's Berry Farm Boomerang is.
Knott's Berry Farm Boomerang is. So yeah, so if you want to ride Knott's Boomerang and the rare double Carré Pro bat flyer from Plopsaland De Panne, you can go to Trans Studio Bali and ride those rides.
Should we talk about Anubis a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, so Anubis is a Gerstlauer and
it's a Gerstlauer
launch Eurofighter.
Yeah.
Themed to Het Huis van Anubis. House Anubis.
And it's really quite cute. It's like the queue is the house, so you're walking through like all the rooms.
And then you get upstairs, which is where
cool
whatever creepy house maintenance guy has all of his secret stuff, and then you get into like
a library and a parlor.
Exactly, you get into the library and you get into this like ancient Egyptian looking machine, and it takes off out of the house, breaks out of the wall, and then which is just you dispatching.
This ride was,
and then you launch into the garden of the house.
Huge surprise, yeah.
Now the ride's glass smooth. It is probably the smoothest Eurofighter by a significant margin I've
ever been on.
Full of airtime, very intense.
The 6-passenger, I call them horsefly trains because they have like a tall trapezoid shape to them. But if you've ridden the Net at Farouk Summerland or Huracan at Belantis, this has the same rolling stock as those. It's also somewhat similar to the rolling stock on Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia, except Six Flags Over Georgia's has the unique hydraulic over-the-shoulder lap bars, which they never did those again because their ride had so many technological fussiness over those restraints. More notably, Anubis was the precursor to Daredevil Dive. They're basically the same layout, except situated differently and using different means of propulsion. Where Daredevil Dive dispatches and goes up the traditional vertical lift drop configuration of a Eurofighter, Anubis starts off with a really powerful launch and a really aggressive top hat. Like, this thing doesn't just sail over the top hat, it flies over the top hat, just like dramatically. And then when you come off of the top hat, the dive loop top hat Immelman combo of Daredevil Dive. That's basically, so you come off of the top hat, the initial top hat for the ride, and that's where Daredevil Dive and Anubis are identical. So.
Except for Daredevil Dive is not nearly as smooth as Anubis is.
Well, yeah, they're technically identical. Also, Anubis tears it up. I swear to God,
runs way faster.
Anubis goes through the same elements, the same size of elements, the same scale, but so much faster. And then it goes up. It has the mid-course and the barrel roll, all in the same basic positioning. But then after the barrel roll, Anubis goes straight into the brake run, like right off of the barrel roll, whereas Daredevil Dive goes to the barrel roll and then does like kind of a longer, like it does like a right turn and then plugs itself back into the station. So it's interesting. These rides, I had no idea prior to like right before I visit that these rides were anywhere similar to each other. But come to find out that everything from the first inversion to the last inversion is identical on these coasters. And only the first drop / top hat and the approach to the brake run and the station are different. So that was cool. Really good ride. I liked it way better than Daredevil Dive. I mean, I love Daredevil Dive, but it makes Daredevil Dive feel so slow in comparison.
I think the best part of that ride wasn't just how intense it was, but it was a really nicely landscaped.
Super nice.
It went through like this forest, and their layout was really hard because, like, obviously Daredevil Dive, you can see the whole layout right in front of you.
Yeah.
But this ride was so forested that you couldn't really see the majority of the layout. I didn't really expect it to be that nice of a product overall. Yeah. Very big surprise. Definitely close second favorite in the park.
Really enjoyed it, and I would look forward to riding it again. And I like to think of Takabisha as like the third successor to this ride layout because the second half of Takabisha and TMMT Shellraiser, the Eurofighter drop sequence, has a very similar dive loop Immelman with a little top hat in between kind of sequence, except that on Takabisha and Shellraiser, that top hat in between the dive loop and the Immelman is an inverted top hat, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure.
Do you remember coming off, like, you come off of the drop, the second half, the beyond vertical drop part of that ride, and it goes into the dive loop, and then it comes up. I'm pretty sure it's a inverted top hat. I'm going to look it up.
There's no inverted top hat on that ride.
You sure?
I mean, it's a very tall, stretched out corkscrew, and there's on there, and like a giant zero-G-roll looking thing. Unless you want to call that an inverted top hat.
Wait.
But it doesn't end in the same direction as it starts.
Here's what I'm talking about. This bit right here. Sort of a, I don't know what you would call it.
I just call it a big overbank.
Big, but like an inverted overbank. But anyway, the second half of Takabisha is like the third evolution then of the majority of the Anubis ride layout. Anyway, loved this ride. We actually skipped the kiddie coasters because we just were more. The
lines are quite long. Yeah. It's kind of like the Legoland effect, but like the family rides don't have super high capacity, and it's definitely a busy park.
See, look at this. This is an inversion.
Another thing that we rode was the Heidi the Ride wooden roller coaster.
Okay, that was really fun.
Heidi the Ride is it's
sort of
super similar clone to White Lightning at Fun Spot America Orlando, except this is all wood, and instead of a 90-degree bank turn at the far edge, it actually is like close to like 80 degrees,
like a normal bank.
So it doesn't feel as rough. Overall, the ride tracked way better, was way faster, very, very smooth. And for those who've been to California to get America, you'll get a kick out of the fact that they had to use the same sort of sound dampening strategy. So including styrofoam between the wooden track cross ties,
the slats
and then having like all these walls and a tunnel to kind of help with minimizing noise. Still, the ride had to close at 7 p.m. nightly, even though the park was open to 11. So we had to hit that early in the day.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad. But
really fun ride. The queue is themed to a Swiss chalet, and the actual finale of the ride has like a bit of a dark ride scene. It's not spectacular.
The dark ride scene's
cute.
Pretty cute. It didn't have to do that, but they chose to.
It's like the perfect wooden coaster for that park. It's just the right size. It's very family friendly. So we really enjoyed that. And right next to it is a ride called the Draak, which is a Mack powered coaster.
Blauer Ensign custom.
That has 3 helices, kind of goes around the area.
That was another one we skipped because it had a really long line. And
but it was cute seeing it run by, though. But
it only went around once.
Circle.
And Sven was like, we could ride that, but it's like 45-minute line for a custom Blauer Ensign that only goes around one time.
But right below that is the Dino Splash,
which was a great log flume that I'm really glad we made time for.
It's like if you ride the ones at Walibi Belgium or Walibi Holland, it's like a slightly shorter version, but it includes the double down max splashdown.
Uh-huh.
It's a highly themed, dinosaur themed, volcano themed log flume that was retrofitted. It's actually really nice.
This area of the park is like the nexus of criticisms for the whole.
It's a lot of themes overlapping incredibly heavily, and there's a Pizza Hut in the middle of it.
This is where the whole criticism of Plopsa having themed rides instead of themed areas. Most of the rides have enough room to breathe. Like, I feel like the Kadri Roller Skater and Anubis and Ride to Happiness, like, they all have... They're not, like, on top of each other. They've got a little bit of their own little like micro areas. Even the Super Splash, which is themed to that pirate show, like had a themed shop and bathrooms and a kiosk for food. But then the area of the park with Dino Splash, it's like you've got medieval theme from the Dragon Blower Ensign. You have Dino Splash. That log flume wasn't always themed to dinosaurs, but it's one of those things where they're like, oh, we have this intellectual property. Let's reskin this existing ride, even though the existing ride was themed to something else. Like, I think it had it was like, wasn't it all medieval? Or like the log flume was first, and then they added the Drac, which gave the log flume a medieval theme, and then they turned around and rethemed the log flume again to the dinosaurs, and then they added Heidi, which is, Swiss chalet theming next to it. So you have this really...
It's a lot, because while you're queuing for Heidi outside, all you see is the dinosaur splash ride, and then you see Drac overhead.
It's like... But for me, it was like, this is like sensory overload. It was like, this is so bad, it's good. We have Camelot, we have the Jurassic period, and we have like World War II era Europe, like mountains. Like, I could see, like, if you're familiar with this park, if this is your home park, I could see feeling, like, exhausted by this sort of thing, and, like, being in this area of the park being like, this is taxing. Like, I'm exhausted by this. This is probably how... The way Sven feels about that area of the park is probably how we feel about Adventureland at Magic Kingdom, where we have a convergence of, like, colonized Africa, the Middle East, Polynesia, and Spain, all converging in the center of Adventureland, where the Magic Carpet Ride and Jungle Cruise is, and being like, this is ridiculous and exhausting. But I still feel like this is more fun. It's, like, so bad. It's so garish, but it's, like, it was funny to me in a good way for that reason. So, I don't know. I wasn't too mad about it. Heidi was a nice surprise because it runs smoother than White Lightning, because White Lightning runs all year long, and it's brutal out here. Like, the weather is the elements can be really unforgiving, especially to wooden coasters. Heidi definitely felt like a ride that only it runs 7 hours a day for only like 5 months a year. You can just tell that it just doesn't. It's not being stretched to its limits. Like,
it's also newer.
And it's newer. Yeah.
And it's wooden and not steel. So that definitely helps with its bending and flexibilities.
But then I was also a little bit shocked to see that it was still just the 6-vehicle train. Because I feel like this could
have been 8 by now by that layout.
This park, how many visitors do they have? They have over 2 million visitors a year,
I think it's roughly around like 1 point something.
Oh, okay. It's not.
I can check real quick.
Oh, they want 2 million. That's what Sven was saying. He was like, they're aiming for 2 million. Ride to Happiness is like going to be the next step to the 2 million annual attendance goal, and that, so on and so forth. But like, how you're going to have like 2 million attendance dreams when you build a major ride like Heidi and it's only 12 passengers per dispatch max? Like, there's just no reason why they couldn't have given that ride a slightly longer, like, passengers per dispatch, especially considering we waited like 45 minutes for it. It just it seemed kind of goofy. It's like, because it's not a small ride. I'm like, there's no reason why this ride shouldn't have slightly longer trains, especially when it's at an amusement park that is really shooting for the stars attendance-wise. Whereas, like, Fun Spot doesn't even get, like, a fraction of that attendance. So, other than that, great ride. And the Pizza Hut was amazing.
Overly priced, to be honest. It was probably one of the more expensive theme park foods.
Way overpriced.
In Europe. But again, this is kind of like Belgium's Disneyland, as Alex said prior. Yeah. So, it kind of checks out.
Yeah.
What else do we have to talk about before we get over to the highlight of the day?
I mean, I think we might already be there.
Yeah, so the next ride in line, right next to Heidi, is Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland.
To be fair, we only spent an evening at this park. We split it down the middle with Bellewaerde. What?
Yeah, so we split down the middle with Bellewaerde. They're actually really close to each other. Like, it was like 30 minutes? It wasn't bad. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a park where it would have been fun to spend the whole day, but we're going to go back. This was my favorite new park of the trip, which Sven and Sean are judging me for, but I just felt like a guest in this different reality that was like culture shock for me. I'm like surrounded by people who are totally understanding and familiar with all this stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know any of this, but it's exciting. It's unfamiliar, and I like that, and it's cool. So I was really into it. I don't know if I'll enjoy it as much the second time around because it won't be new, but I will be happy to find out. But yeah, we rode everything that we rode once except for Ride to Happiness, which we rode 3 times.
More than that.
No, we only rode it 3 times.
I thought we rode it twice, and then we rode it...
One more time.
Oh, really? You only rode it 3 times, huh?
Yeah. We rode it...
I guess we just took a bunch of pictures of it.
We got there... We went there first thing. We rode it twice in a row. And then we did the rest of the park. And then we waited and did our nighttime ride on it, which was incredible. But yeah, the Ride to Happiness area is still under construction. In fact, as recently as this week,
they added all these new pieces.
More stuff.
So believe it or not, the Suez Canal that had the boat stuck, that boat was actually on the way to Rotterdam, which is only maybe an hour north of where the Plopsaland is. So when it finally docked and it unloaded half of the scenery pieces that were stuck on that boat, now the area can be finished.
Were the pieces really on the boat, the one that clogged it? Or was
this boat is so freaking massive, babe. It carries all sorts of shit.
Or was it on another boat that was just not able to pass because the famous boat was in the way?
That's actually a good question. Well, more boats passed before the famous boat got loose, and the famous boat arrived to the port in Rotterdam literally a week before the piece arrived at Plopsaland De Panne. So it could have been the actual boat.
Maybe.
I mean, babe, these ships are stupid large.
I would just be really...
They're the size of a freaking country.
I would just be really shocked if, the famous boat that actually clogged the Suez Canal was carrying...
Please hold. I want to see how much they can carry on that boat.
Was carrying Ride to Happiness accoutrement. But yeah, Ride to Happiness, as Sven puts it, feels like a totally different part of... It doesn't feel like the rest of Plopsaland De Panne. It feels really sophisticated, definitely aimed at the 20-something audience. I mean, it has a bar. It's very... I mean, it feels exact... they've definitely achieved the music festival aesthetic. It feels like you are at, I guess, Coachella.
Okay, you want to know the possibility of it having been on that ship?
Do I?
This ship is 200,000 tons. It's one of the world's largest cargo ships. It can carry 20,000 containers and is the length of 4 football fields. Babe, it's very possible that in those 20,000 big containers, there were some scenery pieces that needed to go to Belgium.
There's nothing more American than measuring shit by football fields.
So, yeah. It's very possible.
It's possible. Okay.
All
right.
Cool.
Anyway, the area of the park is cool. It's got a bar. It has a seating area with string lights over it. It's very... It is...
Wow, what a way to describe it. It is Tomorrowland vibes.
Yeah, it's
the music festival. Cottagecore steampunk.
Yeah, yes, I came up with that.
Okay, really cute. So the queue for the ride...
this isn't just steampunk. It's like steampunk, but with flowers and shit. I'm like, this is cottagecore steampunk.
Well, yeah, the little machine lady is become one with nature.
Yeah.
Shortly, you will be one with nature.
Live
today. This is love tomorrow. Unite forever.
Oh my god. This ride is a little into itself.
I mean, it's the biggest thing the park's ever
seen. As a native English speaker, I felt like all the English, which first of all, I was surprised that it was all in English, but it's kind of the aesthetic they're going for, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's a multinational European festival that a lot of people from different countries go to, so it's all in English.
But I was like, wow, the ride is really into itself. It's a little self-righteous and presumptuous, but I think that was just me interpreting the dialogue as an American English speaker. But the queue is cool. It has an indoor portion, and then you go outside into this little garden, and then you go upstairs.
There is a little pond, and then there's a little water mill thingy, and then the coaster you can see coming in hot.
There's a lot of interest. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
And then you go up the stairs, and then there's another indoor queue,
hallway,
which is located underneath the station. And they use the air gates machinery as part of the theming, which is cool. Very and then you take one more stairs up to the actual station.
I will say that the station's beautiful. The Ride to Happiness mascot lady who's telling us all the mantras in the station, she has this beautiful LED screen that's just over the entrance of the station, like for the dispatch. So
and it has some cool.
It's got some neat
scenery pieces that
scenery
move.
pieces, like they're kind of like monocles that come up and like they cover one eye and then they go to the other and they sort of dance. The ride is a neat choice. It's a really like satisfying and compelling aesthetic. Like I said, more than just the normal steampunk. Steampunk does not really have, like, conventional steampunk does not really have a natural aspect. It doesn't have a nature edge to it, which is why I kind of like this approach to it, because it's sort of like it's steampunk, but like you're out in a field somewhere, like
over the water.
Yeah,
yeah. There's little ponds.
You're
and
like
stuff.
dancing in the grass barefoot, but steampunk.
So let's talk about the actual ride. So the ride starts with a yo-yo roll.
Yeah, the dispatch is a 90-degree turn JoJo roll, which is really fun.
Obviously, the trains are already spinning the moment you leave the station.
Yeah, so
lots of hang time, but very, very fun.
It's fun feeling like which side of the car is heaviest, because for us it was always like we were always face down on the JoJo roll because the two of us were always heavier than whoever was sitting behind us.
And then the train parks on the launch, waits maybe like 5 seconds, and then takes off. The vehicles were spinning in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of an effect there. Then you go up a 90-degree.
You go up
140 feet tall.
Top hat.
Top hat.
Has a left turn in it, but the turn kind of dips you down and back up.
And it's outward banked.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at the water far below. If you look straight ahead, you can actually see the North Sea. You can see the ocean, which is cool.
This ride does a great job of throwing your weight around and manipulating that spinning feature, because this top hat with this weird turn in it, at first it was like, that's an interesting choice, but when you're on a spinning coaster, it's like, okay, they did this on purpose because they want you to get thrown around.
And then there is the 90-degree drop
coming off the top hat,
which is about the same size as the drop on Time Traveler.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't start like Time Traveler Silver City, but it does have almost every element that you find on Time Traveler is also to be found on a Ride to Happiness.
Ride to Happiness, I feel like, has better pacing because both of the coasters park before that first launch, except that Time Traveler's first launch is like a third of the way through the ride.
So you
get
park
that whole
mid-ride.
ride sequence. You park what feels like right in the middle of the ride, kind of catch your breath, and then you take off. The ride continues. Whereas Ride to Happiness, you just have the JoJo roll, and then you park, and then you
which feels like just like a really spectacular turn into what is the first launch versus the whole ride.
It doesn't feel like the ride's pacing is like it, because with Time Traveler, you kind of it feels like you really slam on the brakes. The first time I rode it and it stopped, I kind of felt like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's supposed to do this, even though I know it is. Even though I know it is supposed to, I was like, oh, are we cascading? It's like, oh no, it's not a bug, it's a feature. But
yeah, so after the 90-degree drop, you have a banana roll, which is way more spectacular when you're spinning than it is on a regular banana roll. Then you have the vertical loop.
Perfect vertical loop.
Now, the funny thing is the vertical loop is a little smaller than the one on Silver Cities.
Yeah.
And honestly, with a ride as crazy as Ride to Happiness, it didn't even really stand out to me because it has so many crazy elements. That's followed by a zero G roll.
Yeah, the zero G roll is great.
Mind you, this is all over the water because the first half of the ride is completely over water.
You come out of the zero G roll into like kind of a dirt turn. You do a
really sharp S airtime hill,
like a I-305-esque like flying swish sort of thing,
and then
you fire right into
the next launch, which is parallel to the first launch. Very great use of space. They just kind of fit two halves of the ride into two parts of the park, and the launches are right in the middle connecting it.
So
and that is a launch much like
it's one of those airtime launches,
Copperhead Strike.
Copperhead Strike, except this one's way more potent.
So in the front you don't really get that much air, and a little bit of floater. But if you're sitting in the back car, when you launch over that airtime hill, you get air on that launch. It's kind of wild.
Copperhead Strike, I expected air on that, and I didn't get it. Whereas this one, the drop into the launch is a little shallow, and then there's kind of a small hill for the launch, and then it goes down to the ground. So it's more like it has like a double dip accomplished feeling to it.
And then you launch into a flying snake dive.
The most spectacular looking thing. But it's very
like a double roll.
Very akin to the flying snake dive on Storm Runner, except instead of a 90-degree turnout, it's a vertical, like a true dive loop, where it dives underneath itself.
And it's the opposite of Star Trek Operation Enterprise, so it's like the opposite direction of going through that weird element.
So
That's probably my favorite part of the ride. I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite part, but oh my god, there's so much spinning and you're inverting twice.
Thing, you go into one of the most aggressive moments of airtime I've ever felt.
It's funny because this ride, you think, well, inversion, spinning. There's, it's not much air. But oh my god, this ride has more air than like half the rides in the U.S.
Crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
I think
it's all ejector.
Like when I think of Time Traveler, I think of it's a launch spinning looping coaster that has some great pops of airtime. There's like one or two really great airtime moments.
But then Ride to Happiness is like half airtime, half
machine.
inversions.
Like
it's all airtime.
That ride has like 5 or 6 really amazing airtime moments.
Because then when you get out of that airtime hill, you have a sharp overbank turn over a pond, and then you have a double
airtime hill
into the final breaks, and it is probably the most ferocious airtime. I was really undressed. I mean, this
crazy.
is like RNC level airtime, except for way more comfortable.
Yeah, way more comfortable, and it's like the hills were just the right shape, where you felt like you were out of your seat for just the right amount of time before being slammed back into your seat.
And the cool thing, of course, with a spinning coaster is that like you can have that sideways, backwards, forwards, all sorts of motions.
Yeah.
And of course, the rerideability of this is insane. Every time you ride it, it's so completely different.
And like every time it took my breath away. I was absolutely floored by
it. It's just awesome because we love Time Traveler and we rode a lot last summer and we're like, God, this is really one of Mac's coolest things.
Yeah.
And then we were expecting this to be on Time Traveler's level.
Yeah.
And we'll do a more of a comparison episode a couple of weeks from now where it's Time Traveler versus Ride to Happiness. Not to get into it too much, but this is definitely the next evolution of it.
This ride
it tried some newer things,
exceeded our expectations,
and the creativeness that was needed to build this ride in the park that is shaped the way it is with the water versus having to build it in the valley and on a mountain. They're very different rides, which is really cool, and we'll like I said, we'll dive into it more.
I just love
but it's definitely like the next step up,
better pacing, faster, like more positive G's, definitely more negative G's, and not having that pause in the middle of the ride. This ride it took Time Traveler and improved on it in virtually every aspect.
And added a bunch of new elements. Like, it's really cool seeing a banana roll.
I mean, this ride is
a snake dive. It's
the best
really
way for me. The best word that describes this ride is like audacious. Like, I would have been impressed with half of this ride, but everything after the second launch feels like just gratuitous.
It's funny because first I was like, God, the second half of the ride is really short because it's only like one loop around the plaza, which just happens to have 2 inversions and 3 massive airtime moments. But the ride is so intense, and it has an onboard audio and it has lighting. It has like all the sensory.
The light scheme is amazing. I had the time of my life. After we rode our ride, there was still like a half hour worth of queue behind us that they had to flush out, so we went and took pictures of the ride, like long exposures, and I had a ball long exposure shooting this ride. Absolute ball.
That was really cool that it has the lighting package, especially because it doesn't get that dark in the summer till like 10:30, 11 p.m.
Yeah, we were there late.
But I guess in the winter they'll be running it too. That was a cool aspect of it that obviously Time Traveler doesn't have. Overall, first I was like, well, the second half is very short, but the ride is so ferocious that you don't really need it to be any longer. I mean, it's a long ride to begin with.
It was just right.
God, it is a lot. And I think especially for the park patrons that are used to other things
I think the second ride we had on it, first ride was amazing. We rode in the front. And then on the second ride, we rode in the back. And the airtime hill after the snake dive, the way we were positioned, that airtime was so violent, and we were facing sideways, and it just took my breath away. I thought my eyes were gonna pop out of my face. It was so.
It really was
so
that intense.
Crazy.
It's kind of like the new X2. It's sensor overload by the fact that
the satisfaction that I got from this ride was exactly like how it felt the first time I rode X2. And when we've ridden the SNS 4D coasters, where we were just you come into the brake run and you're just like, wow.
I think we can thank Mac putting a spinning car on the back of Blue Fire for some of the elements. I think they were really trying to see hey, how far can we push these elements?
Now that I've ridden
on a spinning
Ride
coaster?
to Happiness, I would die to ride Blue Fire with
a spinning
these
car.
trains. I cannot believe. I want so badly for them to put that back. I don't care if they have to charge extra for it. I don't care. I want to ride a Blue Fire clone with these trains.
I'm sure we'll get a Blue Fire clone with those trains. I mean, what an easy product to sell.
I know. There's already so many Blue Fire clones like around the world, and there's more on the way. I would like to think that a Blue Fire clone with extreme spinner trains is coming, but I guess we'll have to see. I really hope so.
I'm sure as the product line's gonna take off more, they're literally gonna sell that exact layout as like a cheaper version.
I just can't believe that like this ride. I mean, Time Traveler was such a slam dunk that you think like can they catch lightning in a bottle for the second time, and like Ride to Happiness proved like not only is this a consistent product line, but it like the follow up to the prototype exceeded like shattered expectations, absolutely destroyed expectations. And I just didn't feel like there was that much more room for the ride to get any better. Time Traveler, it was so awesome. I was like, I don't know how they can like improve on this other than just, you know, doing a different layout. But there's no guarantee that a park will want to build like a ride layout for this that's even crazier. But Plopsaland De Panne was like, yeah. All the more like we love to talk about like the next step for a place like Magic Mountain. And we talked about this in a previous podcast episode before Ride to Happiness, but now, more than ever before, I'm like, Magic Mountain needs one of these.
That needs to happen. It needs to be samurai themed. It needs to go down where a Golden Bear Theater is and where Logjammer used to be.
Yeah.
It needs to be a hillside spectacular Mag Launch Coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
to be like
it's just like
Helix
the next step.
meets Time Traveler. Where the Eagles Flight Station was and the Laughing Dragon Peaks, just like decimate all of that and like do a crazy Ninja Star themed Mac Extreme Spinner. It would be the most Magic Mountain thing ever. It would be so incredibly well received by a generation.
Corporate, go put some money in Magic Mountain, please.
Like for a generation raised on X and X2, this is it. This is the next step. This is where you go. It has the craziness factor of a 4D coaster, except you get comfort, you get airtime, and you get a different ride every time. There's no losing. There's absolutely... And
it's so different at night.
You can't lose.
Yeah, and the theme is awesome, the queue is awesome, their operation was awesome. It was just overall a really, really great experience.
Just a slam dunk. Like, it's hard for me to separate the rest of Plopsaland from this ride, but I think that was another reason why I just had such a bitchin' time at Plopsaland De Panne is because of this ride. Like it was such a
Isn't
Nirvana.
It your top 10?
Apps, I would say so. My top 10
it's
still.
in my top
it would be
10
really hard for me
too.
to say that it's not, because this ride was like greater than the sum of its parts.
Kind of gave me like Dinoconda vibes. Like I thought I knew what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
Based on like
based on similar. Yeah.
And then I completely was bewildered by how great it was.
Really, it was like serendipitous riding it, and all 3 times we rode it. Because then when we went back for our nighttime ride, we were on the front again, but of course it was at night, and it was like... So all 3 times, riding it for the first time in the front and getting first impressions, riding it immediately the second time in the back and getting our backseat ride, and then riding it again at night in the front seat again. It was like, every time we rode it, I was like...
It's funny because the trains aren't that long, but the back and front are like very different
Huge
experiences still, which is kind of cool. Because some elements you really get like...
I guess the only
like
downside...
launching into the top hat in the beginning of the ride, you know, it has that 90-degree turn. Obviously in the front you get some crazy air. Mm-hmm. But then obviously coming off the drop, it's better in the back. Because you get that whippy, you know, the whipped 90-degree turn. And then the same thing goes for the flying snake dive, where you get launched into it so incredibly rapidly. It's like you navigate the element within a second. As where, like, in the back, obviously, coming down from the element, getting whipped out of the last inversion.
It's so really hard to choose, like, a favorite part of this ride, because your favorite part in your front seat ride is not the same part as your favorite part in the back seat ride.
Not at all.
And I guess I would say the only drawback with this ride is the capacity. I still feel like they do a great job. But it's like Time Traveler and Ride to Happiness, 16 passengers per dispatch. The trains are not very high capacity despite their length. They're a big train, considering the number, like relative to the number of people that are actually on each dispatch. They're about as long as a 20-passenger traditional launch coaster train from Mac. So I guess that would be the only caveat, is that right now they're not exactly the most capacity-centric rides. But I feel like there's opportunities to improve the formula even further. I could see them doing something even more dramatic, I could see them doing like a 4-cross version or a floorless version. Like,
I don't know. I'm just hoping they would experiment with like maybe a longer train in the future.
Yeah,
maybe add, like,
or
one car
a
to
5
it.
a 5 vehicle train.
Because I think on a clone like a Blue Fire clone, they could add like get 5 trains. But the elements are very tight. They're so tight that I'm surprised that a 4 train vehicle, even a 4-car train, if it comes.
Watching this ride is a trip because these vehicles are each individual vehicle is so massive. And it's hard. It's hard to imagine such enormous vehicles. Like, the vehicles are so big, nose to nose, that it's hard to imagine them articulating through such sharp turns and twists. But they manage and just with flair and comfort. Like, it's just so impressive. It is an impressive, memorable ride.
So yeah, if this park wasn't on your radar, and I can understand why it maybe wasn't if you're listening from far away from Belgium and you have to pick and choose what you can do in Europe, the park definitely should be on your list now.
Yeah.
And if anything, if you're just a coaster enthusiast and you're just trying to go for like noteworthy coasters, even just a half day there just to get on that, and maybe Anubis, in my opinion, maybe Heidi.
Yeah.
Definitely go.
Yeah.
Ride to Happiness is, like we said, it's in Sven's top 10. It's in our top 10. Alex is
absolutely
at like 1,100 coasters, and it's in his top 10. So
it's absolutely one of the best roller coasters in Europe, like without a shadow of a doubt. And
they did it. They took a risk because it's such a different ride than anything else in the park. But I think it's gonna draw a whole new audience to the park.
Yeah.
Which will then kind of really open the floodgates for them to maybe become more of a balanced destination where it's very family friendly, but also, maybe the next couple rides will be thrill focused, where they can really kind of balance it out. As of now, it's definitely an outlier. It's a very family friendly park. I know this is intense, but it's themed to a teenager show.
Yeah.
And then you have this ride, which is one of the world's craziest roller coasters, and its ride is slapped in the middle of that park. Mm-hmm. So as of now, it's a bit of a weird vibe having that. In a park like Plopsaland, but I think that this is the first step towards becoming a much more balanced destination, and becoming a resort that's going to have, the Wallaby guests also coming over.
Plopsaland De Panne is one to watch. Like, this is going to be. I'm very curious about the rest of the next 10 years for this park, and if they're going to. If their trajectory is like having a domineering coaster lineup like for the region. Like, they're obviously off to a really great start with the 3 major coasters here. So
yeah, that's that. Really enjoyed our visit. Go visit thecoasterkings.com and check out our article about our visit. Lots of cool pictures, including obviously a ton of detail on the ride to happiness. A little more explanation on every element, the queue, kind of visuals there. We have some awesome long exposure shots. And of course, I'll check out the rest of our Europe trip 2021. A quick little 5-day, 8-park trip to Europe. It's all on thecoasterkings.com. We're still launching articles every week. Another new thing we've got going on the website is the Crown ratings, where we rate parks from around the world based on 5 different categories, and then we give them an overall rating. Latest one we released when we record this is the Dinosaur Land.
China Dinosaur Land. Crown rating.
By the time this episode comes out, there's one new one. I haven't picked a park yet, so go look at the website and figure out what park we launched yesterday. And other than that, anything else you want to add to that?
Go ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland.
Plopsaland De Panne in Belgium. All right, that's that. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.